So now here he is on the precipice going into the season, Adam, and look at the year that he's had. He had 5 20-point games last year. He's had 22 of those this year. 22 20-point games. He is now going, and he's a bona fide starter for them. Every way across the board, his ability to be patient when he gets in the post, he gets better shots for himself. He's much more confident in attacking high-level defenders. I thought he would defer to those guys and take 1 or 2 dribbles and then pass it if he didn't have something good. Now he works guys that are good defenders to get a good shot for himself, and Steve Kerr's let him do it.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the All-NBA Show presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. We're looking at the end-of-season awards, and we're looking at Most Improved Player. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by Tim Legler. Legs, Most Improved Player is always one of those weird end-of-season awards because it's hard to know, it's hard to quantify who's improved the most year over year.
It is, but it's my favorite award of all. It's the one that I just look at. Because there are so many guys across the league that take that leap, and there's different levels to it, Adam. I think sometimes you're talking about guys that go from maybe barely playing or super limited minutes to all of a sudden now they're an important player, a rotational player, or maybe even they go a leap from barely playing to starting in a year. Statistical production increases. Other times you're talking about a guy that already was a really good player, but now maybe it looks like he's on the verge of stardom. And so that's a big leap as well. And I think sometimes I like that debate. What's harder? Is it harder to go from like averaging 5 points a game as a player to 16? Like to take that leap? Is that a more difficult leap to make in the NBA? Or is it you're averaging 21 and now you take it to 25? Like, because both of those, there's an argument to be made that like it's really hard to like break through that next ceiling, that next layer. And so that's why I love this award, and I love shining light on guys that in some cases they're on teams that aren't getting a lot of attention, but I'm noticing how much better they are than the year before.
I'm curious to hear what your answer is to that debate, but I'm going to give mine. I think it's the latter. I think going from a good player to a star or superstar to me is the most difficult leap. And we see this reflected in every fan base has a young prospect that they're in love with and they see the talent, but not all of them become superstars. And to me, it's because that last little bit it's not just about your talent and your environment and your setup. There's this like mental and emotional part and this maturation. So to me, it's definitely that last one. But where do you fall when you have that debate with people?
Man, oh man, I actually, it really, to me, is a case-by-case basis. And sometimes I'll look at what you're talking about and say, wow, like to get to that next level where you're talking about going from a guy that's kind of on everybody's radar. They know you're a really good player. You're doing it most nights for your team, probably have some success as a team, to, man, like this is an all-star, potentially an all-league type guy that's going to get votes for that. Like breaking through that last barrier can be very difficult. But if I look at other guys and say, man, I wasn't sure the year before if this dude was going to like ever make it as an impact player in this league, like even like a consistent rotational player, starter on a good team, like I have doubts about it. To forget it, put that to bed. They've absolutely surpassed that. And now the question is, can they go to the next level? I think there's a lot to be said for that too, because early in a guy's career, particularly his first 2-3 years, if you're having a hard time finding your footing where you're getting to that 25, 30 minute a night level, and you're consistently producing 15 points and up, and you weren't really having any success doing that, I think people start to wonder, is it ever going to happen for you? And if you finally do it, I think maybe some cases that guy that's the more difficult challenge.
Well, last year was Lauri Markkanen, who is a great example of this type of guy. Everybody knew he was good, but he made that leap to being a star player and a cornerstone piece. This year, DraftKings, we're going to go off DraftKings' odds, and we're going to look at the top 4 best odds. And you have a little bit of all types, so it'll make for good conversation. We're going to start, though, with the favorite. Currently with minus 1,600 odds, a heavy favorite, Tyrese Maxey. He fits in this category a little bit of a guy that we already knew was good. He was a main piece, elevates his role, elevates his output. What did you see from him this year that would make him, what's the case for him being most improved?
Yeah, consistent explosiveness. Like he's capable to go off any given night. And I think one of the things that obviously held him back was he was living in the shadow of other dominant ball handlers, particularly James Harden.
Yeah.
And so it was always going to be a limited amount of usage for him. And he was very more specifically kind of that off the ball scorer. And he was going to do that, but it was always going to be limited because of Harden and Embiid. Like, how many opportunities was he going to have to go off on a given night? Well, Harden leaves town. It becomes Maxey's show, at least as your primary ball handler. And I mean, the guy goes ballistic, and he, all-star appearance, 350-point games this year. I think he did show, though, how difficult it is to take the next leap, which is, can you carry a team when your other star's out? And I think we saw, the struggles of that. That's a whole nother conversation that we found when Embiid went out. Like, the Sixers really dropped off and struggled. But I look at it like this for Maxey. I don't know, for me personally, and I watch the Sixers as much as any team, I don't know that I saw like more other than I think an improved playmaking ability for other people, but it was just more opportunity. That's really all he was given. More opportunity to do a lot of the same things I already knew were in there. So for me, that might hurt him in this conversation if I'm going to cast my vote for this award.
He got 5 more field goal attempts per game this year, and he averaged 6 more points, or a little bit under 6 more points. So that's kind of what you're talking about, is that it really just seems like a scaled up version. But obviously and I think the peaks speak to voters a lot. 3 50-point games, 1 50-point game is huge. To have 3 of them in a season, and in big moments, by the way. I know one of them came early in the season, one of them the first game Embiid was out, and then one of them just the other day. So he has big game potential in him. And I think for a lot of people, that's an important, important margin. You want to see the up end of it. The next guy is Coby White with Chicago. This is an interesting one because you talk about roles changing. Zach LaVine goes down. Coby White steps into a larger role, and he's performed great in that. What's his case?
Hey, I want to say real quick, before we get to Coby White, it's just one last thought on Maxey. By the way, everything that you and I just said could be completely blown out of the water if he goes on a huge playoff run. Like if Tyrese Maxey, like if the Sixers, whatever, they play out of the play-in, whatever, they get to the 6, whatever it may be, if they get to a first-round series and they win that series, let's just say hypothetically they play the Bucks, and he goes for like 31 a game in a series against Milwaukee, and they win that series, and he basically outplays Lillard, like however you want to slice. Like, these things are possible for Tyrese Maxey. Now you're talking about, my goodness, he has gone from a guy that was like the third scorer and like just that other almost more like a Jordan Clarkson type player to, wow, this guy's a legitimate star now that he is made for this stage. So he has more, I think, to even grab in this conversation, depending on how the Sixers season plays out. All right, so for Coby White, look, Coby White, there's no doubt. Again, I think a lot of it's related to opportunity. He went from being more of a bench guy to a starter, but he became a guy that could kind of carry the scoring load or help carry the scoring load with DeRozan, and he got more opportunities when LaVine went out, and he jumped all over it. So I think he took a scoring average from 9 points a game last year to 19. That's a really significant leap. Minutes way up, shots way up, every bit of it. But he was also, very good for them for the most part in pressure situations. So I think he's absolutely deserves to be on this list. Wouldn't be my choice of the 4 names we're going to end up with, but he definitely deserves some credit here.
He's on the older end of most improved player nominees as well. And it's not even age, because he's actually young. It's age 23 season, but it's his 5th year. And I feel like this award often is guys in their 2nd, 3rd, and a little bit later, the 4th year. So 5th year for him, and especially when you look at his career, 13 points a game as a rookie, 15 his next year, 13 the year after that, and then all the way down to your point, 9.5. So he was almost had reached a peak and was on a downslide. And it's one reason for me I was so skeptical of him, but he scaled his game up really nicely when Zach LaVine went down, and almost has given that team a new identity, to the point where I think they have a weird, they have to make decisions now about like is he a cornerstone piece? Is he a guy you build with and do all these different things? Let's go. I want to go to the next guy because it's my most interesting guy. Jaylen Williams plus 10,000. Now I know why Jaylen Williams is that. He was good last year. He's a 2nd-year player. He's got 2 things working against him. To me, I love this pick for most improved, because we talk about the leaps he made in now being like really right at that star level, or I think he's a star, but maybe right below the superstar level. That's such a hard leap to make, and to make it in your 2nd season. It's not just everybody gets better in their second season. He got better in the step that's the hardest to make. And that's why I'm surprised his odds are so long.
I agree completely. Look, if you want me to list, there's a lot of reasons why I really, look at Oklahoma City and why they've taken the leap this year as a team that's potentially could end up with the best record in the Western Conference, which is incredible. How have they taken that leap this year? He is the number one reason. I'd put him before anything, before their coach is going to be up for coach of the year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to get MVP votes. There's no question about it. Chet Holmgren's going to get rookie of the year votes, although I think Wembanyama's probably got that wrapped up now. But there's lots of good things about this team, but this number one reason is because of the advancement in the go-to capabilities of Jaylen Williams as your primary scoring option, period. Yeah. When Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's out of the game, they give him the ball and they let him go. And I didn't know that he was going to turn into this. And I think there's a lot more there for him. I mean, he's in his second year, 19 points a game, 43 from the three. That's a huge leap, 8 percentage points from the three-point line. And to be a threat off the dribble from out there is really critical for a go-to scorer in this league. 54% from the field as a guard, as a wing. Huge shooting splits. And just his ability to now kind of control their offense and get them into good stuff and get stuff for himself when Shai's out of the game and giving them, I think, a legitimate co-star next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the number one reason why Oklahoma City has ascended in the Western Conference, in my opinion.
You also have year over year most improved, which is what I think most people think of. But I think you also should factor in-season improvement. And if you look at him, 15, 17 points a game in November, December, that goes up to around 20, February and March, 22. Usage, first 2 months, 21, middle months, 24, last 2 months, 26. He's a guy that not only improved from last year to this year, but keeps getting better and becoming more and more important. And now he runs their second unit to start fourth quarters. And he's one of their most important reasons they're so dominant in fourth quarter. So for me, I'm just surprised he's the third best odds, because to me, if I didn't know the odds, I might have had him pick number one. And then the last guy they have listed is Jonathan Kaminga here, plus 15,000. I don't think he has as strong of a case, but make the case for him.
Man, I think he's got a stronger case. I think Kaminga, for me, I'll give it away. Kaminga's my pick. And here's why. And I said this kind of setting up the overall conversation about these players. There was a time, Jonathan Kaminga, when I first saw him in Vegas Summer League, I thought, by his second year, he was going to take huge strides for the Golden State Warriors. And he did take some big strides in the regular season last year, but as the year wore on, they lost more and more faith in him. He was a non-factor for them in the playoffs. And I started to wonder, going into this season, I thought this was a make or break year for Jonathan Kaminga. I really did. I started to wonder, because even when I went out there and I talked to the people on the team and whatnot, I didn't get the vibe that they were like, yes, absolutely, man, you should see this dude, grind it out, how hard he works. It's coming. I didn't get that vibe. And I started to wonder, is there something that I don't know here, that this isn't going to happen for Jonathan Kaminga? Now, I'm not saying he's going to be out of the league. He's too athletic and he's got some talent. He's going to find a spot in the league, but that's not what I was talking about. I thought he was going to be an impactful player on a playoff team for the Golden State Warriors. In fact, he was a big part the year before why I thought they could repeat as champions, because I thought he was going to take that step and he just didn't take it. So now here he is on the precipice going into the season, Adam, and look at the year that he's had. He had 5 20-point games last year. He's had 22 of those this year. 22 20-point games. He is now going, and he's a bona fide starter for them. Every way across the board, his ability to be patient when he gets in the post, he gets better shots for himself. He's much more confident in attacking high-level defenders. I thought he would defer to those guys and take 1 or 2 dribbles and then pass it if he didn't have something good. Now he works guys that are good defenders to get a good shot for himself, and Steve Kerr's let him do it. So he's given them belief. They've got more confidence in him. As a result, he's taken off. He's taken his average from basically right around 10 points a game to 16 and a half. And the impact on the nights he plays well, they're a completely different team, I feel like. And that's why, for me, Jonathan Kaminga would be my pick, because I think he was bordering on just drifting off into irrelevancy. And I think now he's broken through and the best is yet to come, and he's going to get better from here.
I love this, because this is one we agree a lot, Legs, you and I on the show. This is one we disagree on, and I feel it's because the most improved is the one that has the widest guidelines. You could judge it by a million different things. I even look at Kaminga's year and I feel like There were a moment in time, we talked about the Warriors a lot this year. There was a moment in kind of the middle of the season where I felt like he really was coming on strong. The last month or so, as the Warriors have gotten on a win streak and different things, it's almost like he's gone back down into a little bit of a lesser role, but performing it at a higher level. So I find it interesting. But you go with Kaminga. I would go with Jaylen Williams. DraftKings says the odds-on favorite by a mile is Tyrese Maxey. So what do you know? We're different all across the board. Before we get out of here, is there anybody that did not make this top 4 list that you think deserves special consideration?
I think there's one player. I mean, there's more than one. And I love this award because, I love finding those guys. I was one of those guys, man, that came into the league and fought through the CBA in Europe and got into the league and got on the roster and you're not playing a lot. And all of a sudden, man, you get an opportunity and you take advantage of it and you break through. So I try to find those guys. For me, Jaylen Johnson would be a guy in this category.
Man, that's a great one.
You're talking about a guy that a year ago, and he had the eye-popping athleticism that always was there. He averaged 5 points a game last year. Who knew what Jaylen Johnson was going to become? And look at what he has done this year. And I know, Atlanta, for the most part, no one's putting a lot of eyeballs on them. They're going to be a play-in team. Probably that'll be the extent of their season. But he's taken his scoring average up to 16.5 points a game or 16 points a game. So, I mean, that's an enormous leap, man, from one year to the next. And it's more now than just raw athleticism. He's adding other things to his game. So I just think, I've seen Atlanta a number of times this year, and he's always stood out to me as a guy that he loves to play. He plays hard, and he's continuing to add to his game. And now I'm really curious to see what his ultimate ceiling is.
He might be a guy that's the favorite next year because sometimes these awards are a year behind. The voter has to get in everybody's mind. But you're right. If we're just talking about most improved from what they were last season to what they are this season, he actually should be the favorite. All of his numbers are basically double or triple what they were last year. And I'm with you. When I watch the Hawks, he's my favorite guy to kind of zero in on. So shout out Jaylen Johnson. All right, that does it, guys. That is our most improved ballot. Now you know where Leg stands. Check out the channel. We'll have all the other awards coming throughout the week. We'll see you then.